Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to you today. So I'm going to talk about the metaverse and privacy and security and data protection, and trying to answer the question whether the metaverse is going to kill off privacy. Privacy is a great topic that the entire world has been discussing at the moment. The latest news is that India the government has released the latest draft on its data protection legislation, which is a really interesting piece of law that I invite everyone to read. And at the moment, there is a consultation with open feedback, but it's really important to recognize how so many countries around the world now have privacy legislation to govern, regulate, fine the use and handling of personal data. And whether privacy is a value that is recognized everywhere around the world. Obviously, different cultures have different priorities, a different approach. And I am based in Frankfurt, but I work as Global Chief Privacy Officer for Wipro, and I deal with different jurisdictions, different countries, and I'm fully aware of the nuances and different social economic conditions and situations and ambitions of countries. Therefore, but what is important, that is to an extent more important than what divides us and what really binding us, is that there is a recognition of the need of control over one's information and the importance and the sensitivity of personal data and the link between personal data and dignity. This is why when it comes to the metaverse, a great deal of attention from policymakers, regulators, going into thinking how are we going to deal with this moving forward. And both the European Union, the US Congress, they have published studies on the metaverse with a view of catching up with this, with what it is and the implications that may be from a privacy perspective. So the metaverse, what is it in the first place, and why does the clear definition of the metaverse impact on privacy? The metaverse is an immersive and constant virtual reality when people interact by means of an avatar to carry out a wide range of activities. And these activities can range from leisure to medical. I've seen some really interesting applications of the metaverse in the medical sphere, but also some really interesting application in, for example, the Wipro is working on the employment and the future of work. What it means to be in a virtual office and how can that facilitate connections between individuals who are based in so many different localities and avenues. So at the moment, we don't know what the impact and the scope of the metaverse is going to be on wider society. There are so many different speculations, but we know that it will bring opportunities and around and different opportunities for people to exploit. Now, there are three characteristics into the metaverse. The first one is realism. Okay, so people will become emotionally immersed into this virtual world, and ubiquity. So the virtual spaces will be accessible through all digital devices when using one and only one virtual identity. Interoperability, it means that distinct systems or platform will exchange information or interact in a way which is seamless. Scalability, and architecture that will need to deliver sufficient support to enable this sort of huge number of users to occupy the metaverse, but without compromising the efficiency of the systems. Now, clearly, the sort of the fact that the metaverse is not one piece of technology, but actually incorporates and encompasses a wide number of technologies, has a clear impact on privacy, because the metaverse is say a melting pot of very different privacy regimes. It cannot be limited to one or a few data privacy regimes, because the metaverse will have and has a global reach and offers its features to users irrespective of where these users are located. And in many cases, there will be multiple privacy regimes that will apply to the same data and even to the same individual. So, for example, the European Data Protection Regulation allows for any businesses located anywhere in the world to fall under its term of business if a business offers goods or services to the European Union or monitors the behavior of European citizens, even though there is no presence. And the same extraterritoriality is also present in the draft India data protection legislation. So the first issue that we will have to solve around privacy would be specifically around which legislation are we talking about, because of the global reach of privacy of the metaverse. And then, because we are at the convergence of so many different technologies, so we're talking about virtual reality, we're talking about augmented reality, where users can create an avatar in the metaverse. So all of this immersive experiences bring together virtual reality, augmented reality, the Internet of Things, and of course brings also together so many different challenges. So, for example, we're talking about competition, data protection, liability, financial transactions, cybersecurity, accessibility. So, all these things that will have to be dealt with together. So, the one of the key things that normally a lot of policymakers and researchers and academics talk about when they talk about metaverse, they think about what has been one of sort of the key topics that has been affected the web and the digital world over the last decades, and that is the issue of competition. So obviously, building a metaverse environment requires interconnection, interoperability of so many different devices and platforms. Major tech companies are scaling up, and if we look at what happened in the digital ecosystem before, where competition has become such a big issue that all around the world, from China to the US and the EU, governments have to deal with the effects of competition. Clearly, also the metaverse, with companies scaling up, then the issue of competition in there as well. So, for example, the risk that some companies will attempt to shape the emerging metaverse standards to foster their business practices. So this is really, really important. So the first issue we mentioned is the issue in legislation. The second is competition. And the reason why I mentioned competition is because of its inextricable links with privacy, because obviously dominance means also the ability to dominate on privacy standards. So that's the other thing that we will have to look out for in months to come. And when it comes to privacy and data protection, I will mention a number of different areas that are very important. So, first of all, it will be crucial for all organizations to navigate the web of relationships that can make very hard to determine responsibility and liabilities. For example, looking at the definitions of data controller and data processor in the metaverse. What does it mean? How does that apply? How we provide interoperability and the movement of users inside the metaverse together with the data, the assets that they bring. And of course, this raises the issue of data sharing and data portability. Companies tend to have proprietary data rights over users' data, but they will need to establish data sharing agreements to fulfill data protection requirements like consent or legitimate interest and the privacy notices obligation. And this in the context of defining which legislations apply to the metaverse. And then, obviously, perhaps the trickiest issue of all, which is the issue around um, direct marketing, because there is no doubt that based on geolocation and emotional response, users will perhaps being able to be offered product selection based on their behaviors, based on their reactions. The sharing of data with third parties under sort of GDPR and privacy legislation across the globe requires attention. But how we maintain this attention will become very difficult into the metaverse, especially when it comes to subliminal advertisement, intrusive profiling, because obviously in the context of virtual reality, we are talking about emotional reactions that could very much lead to intrusive ways of profiling that could have very harmful consequences, so including the loss of control over one's life. So it's really, really important that we look at these issues, and companies are able to be responsible and ethical in the way that they leverage the opportunities that come from the metaverse. The and the same, for example, when it comes to employment, where the workplace, metaverse in the workplace has fantastic opportunities of bringing together teams that are dispersed, dealing with the new ways of working, and but at the same time, the capabilities that the metaverse will offer could enable employers to perform very intrusive surveillance of their employees, and also experiences that are perceptual could replace reflexive decision making. So, l- um, so have the same risks that algorithmic and automated decision making is having on part of society through the automation of the existing inequalities that we're seeing. So it's absolutely important that we apply a privacy, security, and ethics by design in the metaverse. That we look at how we can leverage the metaverse by building trust in employees, in consumers, in customers, so that organizations can feel comfortable and that they are not opening the way to a dangerous practices that could be damaging not just to the company's reputation but also obviously to the finances of an organization as well. Obviously, we need to bring a lot of stuff together here because the metaverse model is based on blockchain, and the decentralized metaverse model could be explored to do more in terms of data protection. And so the decentralized approach could be the way forward. And I encourage organizations and people to look into that and how we can leverage this model to resolve issues that are much more difficult to address in a more centralized business model. So, for example, imagine way that the users could control their data in this system. So I just wanted to give you a flavor of what the main issues around the metaverse are. The opportunities are there, but it's important that we do not sleepwalk in something which is unknown, but we think about how we have come, if anything, late to understand the consequences of the web, of the architecture, of the and and now we're catching up. We're playing catch up on these issues and making sure that we approach the metaverse in the right way, so that companies and organizations can absolutely grow with it with trust and from users, so that it can be a real opportunity for growth. Thank you.